Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel, and welcome back to my Lotus Esprit S2 restoration project. Now, I haven't spent a lot of time with this car recently because I've been spending time with my other cars, my MGB GT and my Jaguar XK8, so if those cars interest you then check out some of my other videos. However, this time, back with the Esprit, we're going to have a look at taking the fuel tanks out, so let's go and see what that involves. So here we are at the back end of the Esprit, and the first thing you notice about the fuel tanks on this car is that there are actually two of them. So there are separate fillers on each side and each go to a tank located in this section of the body here. Now, these tanks are joined by a pipe which I think runs underneath the chassis or through it or something like that, which means taking the body off the chassis is going to be hindered by having that pipe there, as well as having the tanks inside the body itself adding weight, etc. So we're going to have a look at how we actually get that out by referring to my workshop manual, and I think some of this trim around here will need to come off as well in order to get access to some of the fixings and things like that. So nothing left to do except to get cracking.
So armed with my workshop manual and my toolbox, freshly adorned with Soup Classic Motoring sticker there, so thank you George for that. Go and check out his channel if you can, it's really good. It's time to start on the fuel tank. So first thing I did was take off the engine cover. That's simply to get more room in the engine compartment for working on the fuel tanks and removing them. As I mess up this next panning shot and mess around with it for a little bit, it's time to talk a bit about that foam on the top of the tanks. So when I first got the car, I naively thought these were the standard placement of the foam. I thought perhaps it was, to stop squeaks and rattles from the boards that are on top of them. But somebody called Fridge Productions in the comment has put me right, as a fellow Esprit owner with considerably more experience. These are not the standard places for the foam on the fuel tank, so they're not supposed to be there. So either a previous owner has put it there because they didn't know where they went, or my car was done on a Friday afternoon after a few pints at the pub and maybe the intern did those or something, but that's not where the foam is supposed to go apparently, so you probably won't be going back in the car like that. According to the workshop manual, the first thing to do is to take off the pipe connecting the two fuel tanks. So going under the car, there's an access hole where you can see the nut, which is a hollow nut that connects the fuel tanks to the pipe, and undoing that starts to let the fuel come out. So I had hoped to try and get my draining container under there, but the flat tyre and the low car prevented that, so I had to use Tupperware, which really didn't work very well. The fuel went everywhere and I had to keep trying to transfer that to the bigger container, and because it was 30-year-old fuel that had definitely gone off, it stank. And this was approximately 3 weeks ago since recording this, and the smell has only just gone from outside my house, so I really don't recommend you do this. It's best to sort of jack it up. Also, the fuel dribbled out rather than gushed, which made me think there wasn't much fuel in there, but it was just because those hollow bolts were so clogged up with detritus that there was a lot of fuel in there but just couldn't come out quickly, so it did take a long time. Anyway, next thing to do was to take the filler hoses off of the top of the tanks, and this was really hard work. So undoing the actual clamps was easy, but taking the hoses off was really hard, and as I was trying to wiggle them off I could see the body flexing, which wasn't good, and I thought rather than damage the body I'd rather just get a new filler hose. So I just sawed through those just to really make it a bit quicker and to avoid damaging anything else, because I'd replace these hoses anyway. Now, oddly enough, the workshop manual claimed there were 2 bolts holding in each fuel tank, but mine only had 1 bracket and 1 bolt. So unless it's something which I've already taken off during another part of the disassembly, I only had to take off 1 bolt, and that was fairly easy. And then I had the task of manoeuvring the fuel tank out of the car. So this was a little bit tricky. It only seemed to sort of come out one way, so you had to kind of rotate it. I forget now how I did it, but you'll see me do it now. A little bit of patience involved, as it wasn't the lightest thing to get out, but just a bit of wiggling and taking my time and working out which way to turn it eventually did just pop out. And then that's the same for the other side as well. think it took me about half the time to do the other side. And there we go, 2 fuel tanks.
So here we go then, 2 fuel tanks out of the Esprit, and it was a bit easier than I thought actually to get these tanks out, which is good. And I didn't have to remove any of the trim from around here, which is kind of what I alluded to at the beginning of the video. Now, you may have noticed that I haven't produced a video for a little while, so it's about a month that I've had off, and that's for a couple of reasons. One being that COVID restrictions are being eased a bit, which, you know, you end up with more plans and things with the family and friends, and less time to work on project cars. But also I've been thinking a bit about the next phase of this restoration and kind of what to do next. So opening up this section of the car would, you know, open up the engine compartment to weather, so rain getting in, and that'll be exacerbated again if I took things like the doors off and the tailgate, and they're kind of the next steps really. And as I've kind of talked about, this space isn't the ideal space to do restoration work, even though it's the space I've got to work in, and I don't want where I am to impair the quality of the restoration in the end, or indeed kind of the videos that I'm bringing to you following it. So I've kind of taken the decision to pause the restoration for the moment and seek a better place to do it, and that'll be a sort of garage slash workshop that I can use more or less as a studio to do better quality footage of the restoration, and also have a bit more of a controlled environment to make sure I'm not making the car any worse just because it's outside and that kind of stuff. So I don't know how long that's going to take. It could be coupled with a house move, it could be coupled with finding a suitable property nearby to do it. So kind of I suppose slightly disappointing that more restoration footage won't come very soon, but I'm hoping that's not the end of the Lotus footage in the short term. There's probably things I can still bring you and show you about the car in the coming months. And also my other 2 cars, the XK8 and the MG, might get a bit more screen time as well, as I try and get those cars out for a drive and continue to do my sort of how-tos and servicing stuff on those. So hopefully it's not all doom and gloom, and I'm excited to be able to get this car into a place where I can work on it properly and get this car back on the road. So thank you so much for watching, and I hopefully see you again very soon.